Hi everybody, I am working on some pens today, so I thought that I would bring you along with me. And I am going to do one that is an alcohol ink, and then the other ones are going to be glitter. I'm actually throwing a baby shower, and I thought these would be nice as a gift for everybody that comes. I'm going to personalize them for them and just give them out as gifts and thank yous for coming to the shower. I do have my spinner already set up for pens. I mixed about 15 ml of epoxy to do the 6 pens, which is probably a lot of overkill, but I wanted to make sure I had enough because one of them is an alcohol ink pen. This one is the alcohol ink pen, and I did spray paint this. So what I do first is take the pens and I twist off the clip that's here, and I use toenail clippers. I got a pair just for this that are real sharp, and I clip off the rest of the stuff for the most part. If it's as long as it's smooth and not sharp and it's down pretty far, you're good, because the epoxy is going to level out and cover that up anyhow. But I sand it then with a sanding block, and then I have these little stoppers that go in the top to keep the epoxy out of the top of it. These are a silicone stopper. So once I get everything on these ones, I will then wait about 15 or 20 minutes and take that little stopper out so that it does not become part of the pen. Even though you can get it out, it makes the top real weird if you don't remember to take it out. So I have 6 pens ready to go. I did mix up the epoxy. This is actually a Pinata white, so I'm going to remove the lid. And as always, don't forget your PPE, gloves, protect your arms, clothes, whatever, respirator. I'm going to shake up the rest of my Brea Reese inks. This is going to be basically blue. The guy likes blue. This is Dad. And so I have Lake Blue, Mediterranean blue, and then I have some slate, and of course the white, because you always need white. So I'm going to open everybody here, and I'm hoping you can see everything that I'm doing, and I apologize if you can't. I'm not a professional videographer. There may be dogs barking. Stuff could get real. So anyhow, because this is getting alcohol inks, I did spray paint this one and let it dry overnight so that it was ready to go. You can spray paint all of them if you're doing glitter. Personally, if it's the same color glitter as the pen, I do not paint them because I don't see the point in doing that. It's really a personal preference. So for this guy, what I'm going to do is, even though it's getting alcohol ink and you use more epoxy for alcohol ink than you would on, say, a mica or even a glitter to get it started, it still isn't going to be that much. You have to realize that you're working with an extremely small surface area. And the other thing I did do is before I put the stick or dowel inside this thing, I went ahead and coated it with Vaseline so that it does not stick to the inside of the pen. The other thing that happens with that is if somehow, and I don't know how it does it, but it managed to get itself into the inside sometimes anyhow, makes it easier to get down in there and scrape out any epoxy that made it inside. So that is not quite enough because we do need some movement on this, but I don't want it to be dripping off of here. One thing I have handy here is a paper towel because I'm going to actually, I want to wear gloves to do the alcohol ink because I don't really want that on my hands. It's a real pain in the neck to get off of there. So in this situation, what I'm going to do now is reach over there, kind of just wipe my hand off. And I'm going to start by just the ever so tiniest bits that I can possibly drop on here. And I don't want to do too much black because I know what that'll turn into. We will have then a completely black pen. And we don't want that. So I'm just going to move this around. And of course, you know it's going to do its own thing if you've ever worked with alcohol inks. It's going to decide to do whatever it feels like doing. And if you turn it upside down and right side up a few times, you'll get some movement on it. I may hit this yet with the heat gun, just to be sure we are getting some good movement. Right now I'm going to hold it upside down. Reach over here. So, just a quick up and down with my heat gun. Now, it looks like everything's running together. It is. But, in the end, that will not be the case. I do want to put a little more blue right at the top, but everything's warm, so it should move really nicely. So what's going to happen is, this is going to be the first guy on my spinner here. And the reason for that is I'm going to let it kind of spin around, but I'm going to drop some white into this because the white is what makes those colors separate and pop. So I'm going to put it in here. And with these, you kind of chase it around as it's going around. It's not like a regular cup. I'm going to move this glitter out of the way because it's going to be, and because I only have one in there, it's going to kind of move like that, but that's okay. It is very confused. I do have this underneath there, and it's suspiciously close to the pen when it goes, or the mat when it goes around, but that's okay. It's going to work itself out. It's not going to hit it. And you can do too much white, but at this point, I don't think I am. So, and the reason I did that one first is because it's going to drip a little bit the first couple times around. So by the time I am ready with my glitter pens, it will stop doing that. My next pen will be directly across from that to balance this out a little bit. So that will be making it stop, do that clunk thing. So, and again, we have no idea what this will look like in the end, but the one thing I am going to do is this top, I just want a little more blue on there, so that'll roll around on there. You can add to it for the first 10 or 15 minutes or so. After that, you want to be careful what you do. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, that's funny, is I am going to do a glitter one. So, that said, I have a piece of paper that is well used and loved, and I am going to make sure that's under when I start putting the glitter on. Now, what I have today is Dragon Fruit Color Shifting Fine Glitter from Makerflow. They make their glitters, they do a chunky and they do a fine to match. I like these glitters. I think they have a lot of depth to them, and I just think they look pretty amazing. So that is going on something that is similar colored. I'm going to open that. That's nice. And this gets just ever so slight of a coat of epoxy. I'm going to definitely have entirely too much. I'm going to move this a little bit. I'm going to have entirely too much epoxy, but that is okay because I would rather have too much in any situation. Okay, so I'm going to get this, the thinnest of coats that it's just tacky. Make sure you mind the top. And again, I'll take that stopper out a few minutes after it's spinning. It's really not going to get in there after that, especially on this coat, but I will put it back in when I come back and do the rest of the steps to this. And incidentally, the epoxy that I use, and the only epoxy that I use that is a regular epoxy, is tumbler epoxy. I will provide you a link to that. Alrighty, so now I am ready to glitter this guy. There's hardly any epoxy on there. And I'm just going to dump, 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 dump. Until this guy is covered nicely. And I always, of course, dump my glitter back into the container when I'm done. That's why I have the catch paper down there. I ran out of parchment. I would normally use that. I have this just regular piece of paper as a backup. It just slides off the parchment a little bit better whenever you use that. I usually go around twice, just to make sure there are no shiny spots where the glitter didn't actually go. So if you do that, if you have too much epoxy on there, you will get a shiny spot. So just keep adding glitter till that shiny spot goes away. Alrighty, so there we are. I'm going to put this guy on the turner, opposite of Mr. Alcohol Ink. And that should stop things from going awry there with the jumping. And when I am ready to do the next steps, we will come back and do that together. Okay, so I have let these, and I'm sorry if there was a lot of noise. My dogs are playing romper room. So I have let these spin so that the epoxy dries. Actually, that was yesterday. And today what I'm going to do on the glitter ones, this other one is fine with the alcohol inks, but for the glitter ones, I'm going to remove this. And you can see I took out the stoppers. I got to clean them off since they're silicone. But what I have here is some UV resin. This stuff smells terrible, but it also saves you tons of time and makes your pens not so thick. This is also something that's very good if you put a decal on a tumbler to kind of seal it with quickly before you actually do epoxy. And this prevents your edges from lifting and wrinkles from happening and things of that nature, because this cures in just a couple of minutes. So you also need to keep this in a place where it's not going to be indirect UV light. So normally I keep it up in my cabinet away from all of the lights that I have in a dark area. So I'm going to untwist my top here. And what I will do is, and you can do this with a silicone brush if you like that, but I'm just going to put a quick little bead of this, kind of a thick one if I can here. And I am going to just rub this with my finger. I do not have the stopper in the top because I can control this a little bit more than I can regular epoxy. And we literally will be minutes working with this. It does not need to be thick. You will do just a couple of coats of thin UV epoxy over this. Very, very thin. You just want it to be smooth so that if you're putting a decal on, you can successfully do that. So that little bit that I put on there, for all intents and purposes, should be enough for this first coat. And I can just feel a couple places that are rough, so it does feel like regular epoxy, but it does not cure like, it does cure like regular epoxy, but it just works pretty good. So I'm going to take off my glove now, and in the meantime I'm going to close the epoxy at least a little bit. I have this mini UV light for nails. They say a certain wattage. I don't know about that so much, but it would help if I plugged it in. I do try to unplug things when I am not using them. Okay, so I'm going to turn this guy on, and if I press and hold this, this turns on until I turn it off. And I'm just going to spin this around for a couple of minutes. And that's all that you do, about 2 to 3 minutes of spinning. You can do it longer, that's fine. But that is going to actually take care of curing this. You can run it up and down, you can hold it still. You can do this however you want to, but it does need a couple of minutes to do that. And when we get back, we will show you how to put the names on and what our next steps are. Okay, so I'm actually going to, since I don't have time to do all of this right now, I am going to show you just how to do one, put the name on there. So the bottom end is that way, the part that writes, and I have checked with the people that are getting these, and they are all right-handers except one, so that would be one of the purple ones. So you want it so that when they hold it with the point facing to the left, it has their name showing. So I will just stick this right on here. rub it down. Actually going to remove it from here. Oops, not that. Move the pen out of the holder so I can have better control. And I do use my transfer tape over and over and over again. So I'll be able to do all these pens and then some other small projects with this same piece of transfer tape. I will put what type this is in the body of this. But in any case, you can see that this one says Mike on it here. And this is the one I did with alcohol ink for the dad. I'm going to make sure that's all down, and I'm going to put a thin layer of the UV epoxy over that. And then once I'm done with that, I will put a regular coat of epoxy on it for the final coat, and that will be that. And the reason we don't leave just the UV epoxy on this as the final coat is because it does not last as long as regular epoxy does. Regular epoxy will pretty much last forever, whereas the UV epoxy, after a year or two, it starts to break down. So that's why we do that.